Hello friends and welcome to another video. I know it's been a while since I posted something, but if you're here from Instagram, welcome. This video is going to be a follow-up elaboration video on an Instagram reel that I posted about what happened to me when I almost physically died or my body was shutting down and I became estranged from my entire family and let go of a lot of friends who ignored me basically when I was on my deathbed. And when I say deathbed, my body was literally dysfunctional. I was disabled. I was as dependent as an infant would have been, except I had legs. And I could have used my legs, but oftentimes using my legs to walk gave me a flare up. So I'm gonna get more into this, explain more. I had someone, a beautiful soul, on my Instagram leave a comment requesting that I share more with us on how I healed, when I healed, and even more about what it took for me to walk away from those who showed me that they didn't care. They shared that they also went through a near death experience and were basically abandoned by their family. And, this was one of many instances that led them to estrange. And I mean, I have the same story. I have my own unique story, of course, but I have the same arc. And I know countless other people do. And so, because I survived these things, because I have the passion and joy to tell my stories with you and to empower you, I'm here and I'm so eager every time somebody has a question, wants to hear more, wants to learn more. This is my purpose on earth. This fulfills me to serve others, in a context, or in a capacity where, I wish that I had when I was going through some of these things. So what I did, because my mind is so ethereal and out there. If you ask me a general question, I won't even know where to start. I need specifics. So, with the help of ChatGPT, I plugged in the comment request and I said, come up with a list of 15 questions for me so that I can answer this person's comment, thoroughly, no holds barred. I'm here to serve people, I'm here to reveal, my story, my experience, whatever. So it came up with these questions for me, and I'm going to read off them, and I really hope that it does your question justice. And if any questions come up as you're watching this, please comment. I will make more videos. I will respond, because this is so necessary for people to hear. So, number one, what was happening in my body and life when I almost died? So, this is already like so a little bit too general for me, but I'll do my best to be specific. When I almost died, my body was overloaded with toxins, and every body has what's called a toxin bucket. It's kind of like a slang thing, like a medical slang thing. And the toxin bucket is our body's capacity essentially to hold waste material until it either drains out through poop, pee, sweat, breath, lymph, or overflows and goes systemic, which often is the culprit for complex chronic health issues such as headaches and migraines and eczema, which were my two big ones, my two major ones. So I basically, because I was an abuse survivor, well, I am an abuse survivor, my immune system was continually compromised throughout my life because abuse compromises the immunity. And we do live in a world with toxins and waste material and things that we process on a day-to-day basis. But a healthy immune system and healthy mitochondria in the cells, aka the powerhouse of the cell, aka the master of immune function, those mitochondria, when they are healthy and intact and free to communicate with other mitochondria, and the lipid layer around the cells are free of toxins and free of embedded gunk, the cells can communicate freely, the hormones can function how they are written to function, biologically written to function. But when you combine abuse with any human immune system, you get illness, and it is chronic. And everybody's illness and everybody's symptoms manifest differently. Again, for me, it was primarily the migraines my whole entire life. It was primarily always neurological, migraine, whatever. So, anyway, on and off my whole life, I looked for answers to heal my migraines. And once upon a time, I found someone who helped me out by getting rid of the migraines, reducing them, right? But I didn't get rid of them fully. It really didn't work fully. I would still get migraines a few times a year. And when they came, the neurological symptoms that accompanied them were debilitating. It would mess with my sight. It would mess with my proprioception, which is your awareness of your body in space. If you can go like this and you don't feel weird and you don't feel like your hand is upside down or your arm is on the other side of the room, then congrats, your proprioception is probably intact. But if you do feel like your arm is upside down or you crisscross or a limb is all of a sudden floating and like, where's my face? Like, where are my facial features? That's proprioception. It's your body's inability to kind of coordinate your flesh with your motor skill, basically. So proprioception was impacted. I would get tingling, physical tingling. I would go numb. I would get aphasia, which is when you think of a word and you know what you're trying to say, but when you speak, it comes out in gibberish. It comes out like your tongue is a cotton ball and you can't speak. It's kind of scary and disheartening and frustrating. I've had times where I was on the phone with like customer service reps, like trying to repair my computer over the phone, and all of a sudden I get a migraine, and all of a sudden I can't communicate with them anymore, and it's kind of embarrassing. So the neurological stuff started and just progressively got worse from when I was 16 years old. I'm 28 now. And this is just a backstory, just to kind of catch you up to what I'm going to tell you. So that was that. And so this person, they helped me reduce the migraines a little bit, but they still happened less consistently, but more severely. And when I started lessening the migraines, that's when I developed full body eczema. I had eczema patches on my sides, all up my arms, on my thighs, inner thighs, calves, everywhere I had eczema. And that is because migraines and eczema are, from my experience, they are symptoms of an overwhelmed drainage bucket. Did I explain the drainage bucket? I think I did. Our body's capacity to hold toxins before they either drain or go systemic. So migraines, chronic migraines and chronic eczema are both symptoms of systemic toxicity, because when the toxins are not being drained, when there's more toxins being loaded onto the body than the body actually has the capacity to drain, then it will overflow. And you can literally think of it like this. Imagine having one of those funnels with like, you use it to like pour like a wide open glass into the funnel to like funnel it into a tube or something, into a bottle. Because it's hard to pour like a glass of water into like a narrow bottle cap. So you put a funnel. And an overloaded toxin bucket does what a funnel does when you put it under a raging waterfall. Some still trickles out the funnel at the bottom, but that funnel is way too small, way too narrow to contain all the input, all the water, all the toxins. And when you have too many toxins, illness becomes systemic and chronic. So when I got rid of the migraines, I tried to eliminate them. It just taught my body to stop having as many headaches, but it didn't tell my body to drain. So I developed full body eczema. So I dealt with that for a couple years, okay? And that time frame was around 2023, when I worked with this one woman who's not my main healer right now, but I work with this one woman who helped me reduce the migraines, and then I developed eczema. So fast forward, between 2023 and 2025, I would have occasional migraines, and I would have eczema flares now and again. Sometimes they would go away. Like there was one time I was in a relationship with this person, and because I felt very deeply loved and safe, it didn't last very long, but my body was so relieved to be with this person in this capacity. Sharing meals and sharing this sense of safety and physical comfort. It was very therapeutic in a lot of ways. My eczema healed up. It actually went away when I was with this person, and it came back later. But being in that sense of safety improved my health drastically, and my flare ups. So, yeah, so I had periodic migraines, whatever. And they always came with these neurological issues that I explained. And in that time period, I was so afraid a lot of the time to eat anything wrong or breathe in like some toxins in the air or whatever. Like the most random thing would set me off or kind of alert my body to the fact that it might be about to have a flare up. And it was debilitating. It interrupted my life. It was unpredictable. It was actually terrifying. Like, I was so fucking vulnerable. And I've always kind of lived life in a hyper independent way because, for one thing, as a narcissistic abuse survivor, among other things, surviving the troubled teen industry, school was oppressive. Let's just be real. School was oppressive as fuck. They train you to be a good little factory worker sitting in a fucking square desk for 7 hours a day, and go home and do more work and just like whatever. Some people thrive in academia, but like I was not one of those people. So that was a stressor. Almost being trafficked by a predator whose family ran a trafficking ring in 2014, 2015. Losing my sister to suicide, all these things, I carried all of this, and every time I would share my story, I would either get invalidated or met with, I'm so sorry and I don't know what to do, so let's just change the subject. I never had that support that I needed. So because of that, I was hyper independent. And because of that hyper independence, I was dealing with these health issues on my own. But I still traveled. I still lived my life. I still went out to events and I met people. Like, I'm a friendly, warm, social person when I want to be, like when I'm in the mood to be social, And I love community. Like, I love being my weird gremlin self. I love meeting people that I feel like I can just express myself with. And, none of these issues stopped me from kind of being who I was in that way. So anyway, fast forward, 2024, December, I had plans to go to Benin in Africa for this cultural like dance project, creative collaboration thing, and it was the most fascinating, unique, very coolest trip like ever. And I was planning it for a couple months, and I was so excited to go. And here's the kicker, and here's when my health issues really started to plummet. This is the mark in my story of when my health turned bad, when it was like kind of getting the worst that it was. In order to cross the border in Benin, you are legally required to get a yellow fever vaccine. Yellow fever vaccine. So I don't believe in vaccines for me personally. And I know that they are pumped with heavy metals and preservatives and things that sensitive systems like mine have a lot of trouble processing and recovering from. I think in general, when you're literally injected with some of the preservatives that they use to make the vaccines, it's dangerous, because when the body holds on to those things and doesn't push them through, they stay there. They stay there. And when those toxins accumulate enough to get to that kind of breaking point, then you start to get these flare-ups or these weird medical conditions, these things that nobody can explain, but I can explain it because I lived it and I untangled all these webs. So anyway, I got the vaccine and my eczema got worse. I developed it in the creases of my elbows. They became red and cracked. They would bleed. They would get raw. I got it in my joints and my knees. Um, it came up in new places. And also my food tolerance and my food sensitivity skyrocketed. I was like dangerously sensitive to everything, you know? And I was eating mostly like whole foods um, every day. Um, Processed snack here and there, you know, like nothing crazy. But sometimes my body would react with like a migraine or a very bizarre new kind of like neurological flare up where I would start to feel not disassociated, but almost like a static would kind of like wash over my awareness. And it was like this like numbing, like this brain numbing kind of like feeling. And it was new. It was a new quality of this feeling after I got the vaccine. And literally like the day after I got it, that's when the eczema went into my joints. Because hello, joints are lymph highways, and this is where lots of things pull up, right? Another location I would get my flare-ups in would be like right here. I used to always have this big red patch over here. When I would come out of the shower, you would literally, I have photos of this, and I don't want to go through my phone right now, but my arms used to look like someone drizzled a raspberry colored henna over them, and they just drip down. You could see like the drippy line between the red irritated skin and like my like intact skin. And that it would be like all across my chest, all down my arms, and it was like someone just like poured this like slime or goo all over me. It was like literally that defined. um and it's toxins. um and it was amazing. Just it looked like it was like this dripping stuff just dripping down my arm, and it was like red drip and then normal skin and then red drip. So anyway, I got the vaccine in like December or something, and my flight was on New Year's to go to Benin. So I went, and it was a long ass travel time. I got there, whatever. When I was in Benin, I had a bad flare up. It was the worst of my entire life, and this one also could have been fatal because one of the things that happened to me was the tingling and the numbness. I felt it on my tongue, and I'd never felt tingling on my tongue in my life. It's terrifying. Terrifying. So I was laying on the I was leaning up against this like pillar in the hotel that we were staying in. For the record, this is a third world hotel. This is not what you think of when you think of hotel. This was a room with, you know, a door with a lock and slot windows, you know, and a drip for a shower and a bucket and a toilet with no lid, um, and a bed with sheets drenched in, you know, some previous person's sweat. And it's like I don't mind living, you know, I didn't mind the ruggedness, the grossness, whatever. I felt comfortable with it. I felt okay with it. I totally embraced the experience. But that was where I was. So it was not very comfortable to be having severe health issues with. Also, there was no temperature control other than like wetting a sheet and sleeping under it, because that actually creates a cool air circulation. Pro tip: if you are so hot in a room and you can't cool down, you don't have AC, put a cotton bed sheet under water and wring it out so it's damp, and then lay that over you, and it creates like a little AC like cooling system beneath the sheet. It actually works. It's really cool. So that was my situation. So I was leaning up against one of these pillars, and I was starting to feel that kind of static terror, this neurological impending numbness, like some god was putting a bucket over my spirit and numbing everything out. And it was it I cannot explain to you more than that. It was the neurological experience of this was so unique and so unusual and so difficult to describe, but it was like I knew something was happening, and it was bad. I was losing control of my body, and my body was telling me that it was about to shut down. This was the first of its type. This was the first flare up of its severity that I had. There was more after this, but this was when I began to crumble with my health. I was leaning up against this pillar, and then someone saw me, and she was like, "Are you okay? Like, come sit." She led me to her bed in her room. I sat down, and then I cannot remember the order of things after that, but I was so weak. I was so weak I couldn't hold myself up. My muscles lost all their tone. I had to use the toilet, and my TMI, but whatever, I don't care. My bowels had no strength. Like, my muscle tone was like leaving my body. Like, I was like, like being rendered, uh, what's the word? Just vulnerable like that, useless. I had no force. I had, no strength. This person who was helping me, she handed me a glass of water too, and I think I was holding it while I walked to the bathroom, and I sat on the toilet holding the water, and I was so weak that it just fell out of my hands, and I dropped this glass, and it shattered all over the floor, and I didn't even I had no strength, and I needed this person's assistance to even walk. Like, I could not hold myself upright. I was so weak. It makes me emotional to think about it. And then I remember sitting back down on the bed and laying down and putting a pillow over my face because I started getting an aura, a migraine aura, which is a neurological symptom. And if you've ever had them, you know what it is. But I'm going to show you this right now to show you exactly what it looks like. I hope it works on the video. I have a perfect thing to show you. Okay, this is actually might be a bad example, but do you see how the clock is kind of glitching out a little bit? When I look, well, actually, yeah, this actually works just fine. So look at the clock, look at the numbers, look at them glitching, and now look at the microwave buttons. Like, look at the number 2, or look at the I don't know, any of the word buttons. And I just want you to be aware while you're looking at one of those word buttons, just notice the flashing lights in your peripheral vision. Don't look at them directly, but look at them in your peripheral vision, and that is exactly what a migraine aura looks like for me. I see these psychedelic, colorful triangles that fill in a certain blind spot in my vision, and then they start to swirl. God, I'm having flashbacks in my body just thinking about this, because it was so severe and so terrifying. Every time I would get a flare up like this and I would feel it coming on, it would make me feel even more terrified, because the health issue itself was not even the scary part. The scariest part was the fact that I was a survivor experiencing these things alone, and I didn't have a system to take care of me. I didn't have a family system. I didn't have like friendships that I could rely on in that way to literally like take care of me like a baby, because that was how vulnerable these health issues rendered me. So anyway, I started to get the aura, and then the aura overtook my vision, and half of my vision was a blind spot. I haven't had this in so long, thank God. I haven't had a migraine since I started working with the person who saved my life, and I think this is the longest time I've ever gone without having one in my life. But anyway, that was happening, and then shortly after the blind spot, I had a pillow over my head. I was like, I couldn't do the light. I had to save my senses. Then my proprioception started going out of whack, and I literally felt my leg on the opposite side of the room, on the ceiling. I had no orientation physically of where my body was and where my face was. And that is terrifying to feel, because when you lose control of your physiological sensations, you lose control of your motor function. You could choke on your own spit and die. And I asked the woman I was with if she could hold my arm, because I needed that anchoring. I needed some kind of touch to feel my body still in the room. And as I was going through this, more people kind of walked by, and I heard these like ambient voices of other women in the room who literal angels to have been surrounding me during that time, because they didn't pathologize me. They didn't, they really intuitively met me where I was at, and they didn't freak out, which was vital for me, for my situation. Because this was not something that conventional medicine could heal. I'm a hopeless case for conventional medicine. I don't entirely believe in conventional medicine as a whole approach. It's not holistic. I mean, it's conventional, it's not holistic. That's in the name itself. Anyway, so she was holding my arms, and my legs were flying all over the place, and my proprioception was like not working, so I had no orientation of my body, which is, if you haven't experienced this, then there is no way I can describe it to you. There is no way I can describe it to you. It's like your awareness severs from your motor function, from your motor control, and your body is in God's hands. You have no control, no control. And then the scariest part was when my tongue started to tingle. And I remember this so specifically. If you've ever had neurological issues with a migraine where like your hands or feet or whatever, they get numb, they tingle, that was happening on my tongue. And it was around the edge of my tongue. It started like over here, and then it traveled back. And when it was back here, I got so scared, and I said, no, please don't go down my throat. Because if it went down my throat, that's when I would have choked. That's when I may have stopped breathing. If it went, this was the first time in my life that the tingling was internal, like on my tongue. And it very well could have gone inside, like into my throat. And if that happened and it went down to my lungs or in my chest, I could have stopped being able to breathe. I didn't know what was going to happen next, but I was at the edge. I was at the edge of my life. I was terrified for my life. And I was very aware that if something continued on the way that it was already happening, I could have lost control of my body and passed out and died. And so after that happened, I just kind of slept for a few days, and I developed like also TMI, but an insane kind of diarrhea stomach bug. It was excruciating, and I battled internally with, do I go home? Do I stay? But I prayed to God, and I got confirmation that I needed. I didn't want to go home, but I prayed, and I got the answer that I specifically asked for. Multiple times I got confirmation, and I was told to go home, so I did. And when I was in the taxi on the way to the airport 3 days later, as soon as I was strong enough to like stand on my feet again, still very, very weak, I had another flare up in the taxi on the way to the airport. And the only person that I had and that I was comfortable texting with this vulnerable medical urgency was my mother, my abuser, my narcissistic abuser. And the tricky thing about narcissists is that they don't appear all bad, but the abuse does outweigh the the niceness and all that stuff. But I guess it was just enough for me to keep me hanging on by a thread, right? That's what they do. They give crumbs. Crumbs are enough to keep a person alive, not without consequence, but enough to keep a person alive. So I was frantically caps lock texting my mom, like, pray for me because I might die. I was alone in this taxi in friggin' Benin, third world country in Africa, having another severe flare up, with someone I didn't know in a foreign country. It was just so really dangerous. It was so dangerous and so terrifying. I was safe. I was protected. I was divinely protected. And this guy was a trustworthy person who was, known by the person who was leading the trip there. And the person who was leading it had like 25-year and counting ongoing relationship with the tribe where we were staying, the community there. And anyway, so I got to the airport, and the flare-up dissipated just enough for me to go through customs and get on that first plane. But the flare-up happened in that taxi because if you know anything about Benin, especially like Cotonou and like Ouida, I think Cotonou is like the capital, or Ouida is the capital. I don't know, but we were staying in Ouida, and the airport was in Cotonou, and the AQI, the air quality index, was like in the 100 mids, like 150, 120, whatever. It was so gray and smoggy from like toxic smoke, because they burn garbage there. They burn plastic, so all these chemicals are floating around in the air. And for someone like me who is already immunosuppressed and compromised and going through these issues, like everything was just accumulating. So I would breathe in that plastic toxic smoke, and that's what triggered my flare-ups there. And then on the way to the airport, breathing in that air, as soon as I started smelling that toxic burning plastic chemical smell, flare up in the taxi. So like clockwork. Anyway, so I got back to Florida, to my mom's house, where I had a bed. I had a human being to cook me big batches of soup occasionally. Not every meal. I still had to cook for myself at times, even though I had no energy to do it. But I did. I had a shower. I had, medicine. I had air, like temperature control, all things I didn't have in Africa. So got home, and by the way, my birthday is on January 19th, and 2025 would have been the second year in a row that I was bedridden with like a flu thing. So I had that stomach bug in Africa, and then when I got home, I was sick with a flu like twice in a row, like early January and then later in January, and I was just like in bed. So basically at home, what I described of what happened to me in Africa, that pretty much continued, but it was, instead of a spike of a flare up with the tongue tingling and the fainting and the limbs on the ceiling, with this almost like this explosion of like neurological symptoms, it was more like a constant wave and just a wash over my life of constant neurological sensitivity. For example, when I sat in my car, which has a GPS like computer system, the EMFs would give me a headache like clockwork. Whenever I would step outside to go walking, usually at night, I would start to black out. My body would act like it was going to faint. I don't think I've ever fainted in my life. I've only had these neurological flare-ups that kind of render me useless for a moment, and then I come back up and I am lucid again and I sleep it off for a few days. But yeah, I couldn't stand or walk without my body almost collapsing for the first couple of months after I got back from Africa. And I could not eat without not being able to not being able to predict whether or not the food would give me a flare up. I remember when I first got home and I was walking out of my room to the kitchen to like warm up a bowl of soup or something. I remember seeing trailing lights of colors, and my vision was so vulnerable. It was like, it was just one of my many undulating neurological symptoms. Also, when it came to like emotional pain and emotional drama, this was the exact turning point in my life that taught me that my peace is non-negotiable, and I would rather be alone than be friends with someone who disturbs my peace at the slightest. And here's why. I forgot to tell you this part, but when I was in Africa, the thing that set my flare-up off, the beginning of it, was this instance. We were dancing in a sand pit, and I sat on a chair. I started to feel myself get weak. I was losing myself. So I sat on a chair, and it did have somebody's bags on it, and I leaned back slightly, and I didn't think that I was damaging their stuff, but apparently I damaged this girl's pair of sunglasses, and I offered to buy her a new one. She was like, no, no, but she was like upset, understandably, and I was like, I felt so bad. And when I felt this wave of emotion of just like, oh no, like I felt ashamed of ruining her sunglasses. I was like, oh, I'm so careless, you know? But in reality, I was like going through some health shit. But anyway, I felt bad. And that moment of feeling bad was enough of a chemical surge of emotion in my body to overflow my toxin bucket. Because remember how I've been describing the toxin bucket? Emotions are toxic when they stay in the body. They're designed to pass through. It's like how you eat food and you digest it and you're supposed to poop out the stuff you don't use. It's like, imagine if you ate food and you never pooped. The same exact thing goes for feeling emotions. If you felt emotions and you never expressed them or processed them, or they physiologically would get trapped in your body, they would kill you and they would get stuck. So my mini burst of like shame and feeling bad, feeling guilty, I broke this person's sunglasses, I feel so bad, I didn't mean to. That small emotion was enough to set off a waterfall of a cascade of consequential health issues. And in that moment, I realized how sensitive my system, was to emotions, and it was so fascinating because it really showed me the necessity to protect our peace and the tax that emotional withholding and emotional disruptiveness, disruptors, disturbance causes on the nervous system, on the body. Because I had just enough toxins that one tiny breath of a painful emotion was enough to cascade the rest of the symptoms, whatever. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying. So anyway, when I got home, when I was in Florida, healing, recovering, I started to really pull back from all of my relationships because I realized I have nothing to give. I can no longer carry other people's burdens. I can no longer be the compassionate therapist friend that people go to for advice. I was always that person, the healer, always appreciated for my capacity to see people, love people, but I never got that back in return, not as deep as I gave it, for the most part. And not to criticize or shame the other people, but just to name the truth. They had their good qualities, but you know what? Whatever. So back at home, I was literally faced with the decision: protect my health and prevent a neurological flare up, or continue engaging socially the same ways that I was. And it was a really surprising kind of dynamic to find myself like between. Like, it was very, very interesting that this was how I realized the cost of my peace. That was when I first started to realize the cost of my peace, because I was feeling it in my body with my health. My health was paying the price for emotional disturbance, which was really, really interesting because it was such an immediate way to recognize what anything less than peace in an interpersonal relationship actually costs the body. It was so obvious to me because my health was, reacting to it. So, like I said, I continue to have these flare ups. And at one point, my skin, which by the way is looking you could not recognize me. You could not recognize me last year. My skin is like smooth right now. It's smooth. To think I ever went through what I'm about to describe is mind blowing. But and I mean I even still have like little scars that just like never healed from like some of the like at my elbow. Well, you can't barely see that, but that little guy. I don't know, like there's one over here. There's like some scars that are just left over from patches in my skin that actually, I mean, you can't even see it on the camera, but I have like a kind of like a raised texture thing over here. The scars were left where I had rashes every day for about a year, probably a few years. Maybe not a few years, but like for at least the year or like 8 months, 6 months, whatever, having like perpetually raw skin in one same spot, it left a lot of scars. And if you were here in person, I could point out to you like the white spots where the scars were, where the things would happen. And I'm like trying to see if I can see any of them on my shoulder. I don't even see any over here. But anyway, one of my symptoms was a broken skin barrier. So basically, my skin, and I am not exaggerating when I tell you this, I swear to God, I swear on my life, but my skin was like paper in the sense that I could not breathe, wear clothing, move, or shower without physically trembling from pure overstimulation of sensations. Wow, as I'm retelling this story, I'm viscerally remembering some of these things. Another one of my symptoms was what I call pinprick itching. And this one is a kicker. So the toxin bucket overflow that I was describing before, right? When you have too many toxins in your body, one of the symptoms that can manifest is a sensation that you're being stabbed by a needle on your nerves, under your skin, deep in your skin. Why? Because the myelin sheath, the fat, protective fat covering around your nerves, in your skin, in your body, can literally get chafed and worn away by toxins in large quantities rubbing up against them, especially in lymph highways around the joints, shoulders, where you have lots of like lymph, in these areas. So one of my other symptoms that I would wake up with and I would go to bed with, God, is making me emotional. It was so unbearable, dude. It was living hell every day. I remember when I felt so what I'm trying to say, I felt like a mosquito was probing my actual nerves with its proboscis, or like the tip of a needle was poking me or like sticking inside my nerve, and I would scratch until I would get these like permanent scars that would not go away for like months or years. And nothing helped it until I started working with my healthcare practitioner on like February 4th or 5th or something that year. And she does a modality called quantum nutritional testing where it uses kinesiology, and she's also hyper intuitive. Like, aside from the work that she does, which is intuitive in nature, she herself is hyper intuitive, no bullshit kind of woman. She is like revolutionary in her field. I mean, she saved my life. She helped me recover from this. And she gave me a carbon-based, a fulvic humid acid-based binder, just carbon and some other stuff in there. And it is a systemic binder, meaning it crosses through the blood-brain barrier, so it can actually go inside your brain. It can pull out heavy metals, mycotoxins, viral bacterial debris, all microplastics, like all of the toxic waste. It can actually go into your pineal gland, your brain, your muscles, your organs. It's systemic, meaning beyond the tube of your digestive tract from mouth, esophagus, intestines, colon, whatever. That's like, you know, the tract of, you just swallow something and then you pass it through. But systemic means it goes beyond that tract and goes everywhere in the body. Carboxy actually turned my life around because with my skin barrier issues, my skin barrier was so compromised with the pinprick itching. I woke up every single day and I went to bed with constant pinprick itching, and it was like having 10 full-time jobs every second, and I couldn't function. You can't function when you can't tolerate being and existing in a nervous system. You can't function. You need people to feed you. You need people to spoon feed you. If you even have the capacity or the wherewithal to open your mouth and chew and swallow. Because sometimes when you're so overstimulated, you can't do anything else. And I lived that way for months. Months on end. Day after day after day on end. And I had waves, right? I had waves, but the worst of it was between January and April. And that's a long fucking time to be going through that when it's every single fucking day. And you're being abused at the same time. That was what I survived, dudes. That was what I fucking lived through. It's unbelievable, but it happened. So anyway, when I got Carboxy, I started to... it cleans up radiation, free radicals as well. It's amazing. It's amazing. Cellcore Biosciences, that's the company. Carboxy, Oxy. Look it up. Look into it. Ask your body, ask your intuition if it's, something you want to try. It can't really hurt most people. But if you were in a situation like you were, like I was, where you're kind of dying and your body is just like overloaded, you got to be extremely careful about what you take and what you put in, because if I took too much carboxy or I took it at the wrong time, it could cause what's called a Herxheimer's reaction, which is when either you bind or detox too much without supporting your drainage pathways first, because what that equates to is like pouring a little bit more toxins into the bucket before the bucket has had a chance to spill. Okay, so Carboxy, after the first day that I took it, let me tell you actually what my skin was like before I took Carboxy. So every night I would go to bed, I would go under the covers, and instantly my entire body would be covered in this film of liquid. And it wasn't plasma, because not every square inch of my skin was broken, but every square inch of my skin had this fluid, and it was lymph fluid. I would go under the covers and my entire body would just get sticky in an instant, because my body was just oozing toxins, trying so desperately to get the fuck rid of them. The inside of my thighs, so my knees, my joints, when I would straighten out my joint or my elbow, you see these creases? Well, imagine 10,000 of them all over here. And imagine the tiny creases. You see the tiny creases? Imagine those tiny creases filling up my whole half of my elbow and my whole thigh whenever I would straighten out my knee. That's how dead and dry my skin barrier was. And I had rash patches just everywhere, and my inner thighs especially were so bad. They were so bad. They were so itchy. They were so crispy and crumbly and so bad. And when I would take showers, even lukewarm or cold water, it just stung every time. Oh, that was excruciating. I went through months of this. Months. 6 months. With some breaks in between towards the latter half of those 6 months, but for 6 months, I couldn't reliably take a shower without trembling with overstimulation from how raw my skin was. And anyway, my inner thighs were ravaged by the toxicity. But the day after I started taking Carboxy, it cleaned up just enough for me to be able to tolerate a warm shower again, just for that moment. That did not continue, but it was like a miracle vacuum in my body. Um, but essentially, the root cause of these issues um, were unchecked parasites. If you have a pulse, you have parasites, as they say in the naturopathic healing world. And like I explained earlier, a healthy immune system, healthy mitochondria, in a body of someone who is loved and supported, can naturally detox and kill pathogens and parasites for the same reason that you can be exposed to a sickness and not get sick is because your immunity is strong or you have the antibodies. Um, but my body had a lot of trouble fighting all of these things that built up over time. They accumulated over time. So parasites are sponges for toxins. I believe the amount of toxins that one parasite holds is about 10,000 the times the amount of toxins surrounding it. So when parasites either die or I think like when the worms die and when they maybe like lay eggs or when the eggs hatch or something, it releases those toxins. So when you're actively cleansing a severe parasite infestation like I was, oh God, this was hell to live through. I can't believe it. Can't believe that was just so crazy. But when you're detoxing these little worms, you must balance drainage, killing them, and detox. Detox is throwing the garbage in the garbage can. The kill off is killing the cockroach and you just kill it. If you have like a pest problem in your house, you can kill all the bugs, but then the bugs are just sitting there and eventually they're going to rot and make your home disgusting. So then you detox the bugs, aka you sweep the bugs and you put them in the garbage. But then you also have to drain the bugs. So draining is taking the garbage out and putting it in the landfill. Also, like, that's so sad. Like, we have landfills and we produce so much trash. But anyway, it's an analogy. Imagine that the landfill is where the garbage neutralizes. Well, when you drain and you excrete or whatever, that's when the garbage in your body neutralizes. So if you kill too many worms, you're going to have too many toxins. You won't be able to even walk around your house because the worms are going to be dead and they're going to be spilling their toxin juice everywhere. You can't even walk around your house without spreading them further. So systemic toxicity can literally kill a person. I mean, sepsis, is that the word for it? It's systemic toxicity. My practitioner, by the way, who I work with still to this day, she told me, I believe that she said that most complex chronic illness cases that she sees are resolved by dealing with these parasites, and you got to be really, 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 really intentional when you're working with them. So anyway, I don't know, honestly, there's way more that I could still describe after all of this, but that was what I lived through. So right, I did talk about the breaking point with some of my friends and this and that, whatever. I throughout this process, I created a GoFundMe for myself because I needed mental health therapy and I needed to pay for hyperbaric oxygen therapy. And I was nervous about how I was going to do it on my own. That's a whole other story. I later found out I was being financially abused and my financial situation was hidden from me, so I didn't know anything about the funds that I had because I live off of a death insurance settlement annuity from my father's death, who died in a plane crash when I was an infant, and my mom never handed over her custodial control of the account that she used to manage my funds, but she managed them well after I was legally of age to inherit control of the money. So I created a GoFundMe not knowing a thing about the dollars that I had somewhere in an account. Now I have control, you know, and I just bought a house with the money that I have, you know, the freedom that I have. Um, I untangled from her this summer. So, anyway, this past summer, anyway, I created a GoFundMe and I was so vulnerable that I literally resorted to sobbing on my Instagram story, asking for help, send me soup, make me food, please, I cannot function. Every fucking person, I shit you not, every single person to reply to my story who offered something to hang out or to make future plans or to support me, when I replied to them, they ghosted. Every single person, except for two people who I was never really super close with. One person offered me a free astrology reading to kind of dig into understanding from a cosmological perspective why I was living in a shit show. And it was very insightful and very comforting, very validating. So I dearly, dearly appreciate that. Another person, I I would consider this person like a dear soul. We're not close, but we used to hang out and whatever, and I never had any issue with this person. We were just like a peaceful person. That's it. Never any drama, nothing like that. But she saw my story and she asked, she said, "What's your address? Do you have any diet restrictions?" And I said, "No," and I gave her my address, and she sent me a soup that day. But the person that I thought was my best friend watched plenty of my Instagram stories and waited for me to put myself further out there than I ever wanted to, asking for help publicly and saying, "Can someone please make me a soup?" in order for her to say, you know, "I'm making you a soup." So she brought it to my house and it was a broth. It wasn't even food, it was a broth. Like, okay, maybe it was bone broth, whatever. But I just found it really ironic and metaphorical that the moment that my life is hanging on by a couple of threads and I ask for sustenance, not only did she make it after I asked for it, you know, she didn't check in on me. She didn't show up. She didn't show up. It was just ironic that when I was asking for food and for soup, she came back with a liquid. There was no substance, you know. I just find that extra the the symbolic layers in that for me are very significant. But anyway, yeah, everyone just watched. Everyone just watched me go through this. And that's when I realized, like, wow, wow. They were cool and fine up until they didn't know what to say, up until they saw me actually at the edge of my life. And they were too uncomfortable or too insecure to like try to say anything helpful or even try to do anything helpful. Like when someone is sick, I like to offer, like, that if I'm close to them, I will offer to do your chores. I will buy you food. I will make you food. I will take care of you. You don't have to lift a finger. That's the kind of person I am. But I didn't get any of that. Except for the one off instance where this very blessed soul sent me a soup, you know? Um, During that time, though, I did get closer to one friend who we still talk today, and they are a very good friend, very good person, and they were very compassionate towards me during this time. But even other people who would reach out to me, like, so as I went through this, because I'm the kind of person that I am, if you see me on Instagram, you know that I have a servant's heart. And even when I was going through this illness and stuff, I actually shared so many YouTube videos of my, emotional, spiritual insights that I was getting during this dark night of the soul. Like, I still showed up and like was of service because it came from my heart. It was like what I was going through made me think of other people who would have been going through what I was going through. So that gave me the inspiration to show up and remember compassion for myself. I remember that I'm worth surviving, I'm worth living, and I'm worth being here and making it through this. And I did it by myself, you know? I really did. Um, so that was how I realized that I'm done with anybody and everybody who meets me with anything less than unconditional love, devotion, and reverence. And if you think that's too high a bar, then, you know, I wish you comfort with what you accept in your life. But going through this experience taught me the cost of my life. From a molecule of from one heartbeat, one breath, one small emotion to the whole spectrum of it. It taught me the cost of my life and the preciousness of my life and the value of peace and the value of being able to feel so secure and dependable on people. I want people who are going to be here for me the way that I was always there for other people. And yeah, that was my turning point, at least with friends and acquaintances. However, with family, this is so draining to think about, but I'm almost at the end. I need to get this video out. With family, so there was one time when it was after I took a shower and I was having a flare up. And I got that neurological static, that wash, that feeling of terror. You know, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm losing control of my body. And it was after I took a shower, so my skin was raw, red, you know, not retaining any moisture, anything like that. And I like draped a towel over my body without even like drying my skin. And I laid like naked on the ground with a towel over my body, laying in front of a space heater because I could not regulate my own body temperature. So I called my mom, aka sociopathic narcissist, because like I explained to you already, I was hyper independent. I did not have a support system. I didn't have anybody to reach out to. I reached out to my Instagram community. I reached out on Facebook. And what happened, like I already said, people would respond, but then when I would reply, they just fucking ghosted me. So I was left with nobody. I had no power, no control. Literally, like it was such a helpless situation. So anyway, I called my mom. I said I needed a physical body in the room next to me in case I died or in case I needed water or in case I passed out or something. So she came in and she was on her phone. And she sat there for no more than 10 minutes while I trembled underneath that towel in front of the space here. I was trembling. I couldn't control my body. I was trembling from the overstimulation and from also the cold. I couldn't, my body regulation, my temperature regulation just wasn't working. The heat could blast me and it was not heating me up inside. I was so wrecked. So anyway, in that instance, this was the turning point for my mom. This was when I decided that day that she's dead. This was the day that every hope, every illusion popped and it died and it went in the ground. This moment. So I was on the floor. She was on my bed. 10 minutes go by. She gets a fucking work phone call. She leaves me. She takes it. And I screamed at the top of my lungs, knowing very well that she would abuse me for being mad, for fucking abandoning me. Like all narcissists do. Sociopathic, narcissistic fucking bitches, man. Devil costumes for the devil. Devil's gloves, devil's mouthpieces they are. That's it. Hollow bodies. Souls so far away. So possessed that they literally resort to abusing somebody the way that they did to me and the way that they did to other survivors. Anyway, I screamed at the top of my lungs. I was terrified for my life. For my life. And I didn't have a single other soul to reach out to. Forget about the hospital because, again, conventional medicine, it would have killed me. It would have killed me. The chemicals, the drugs, whatever, the lights. Her reply to my enraged screaming was that I was selfish. You have no idea how important this call is to me. You're so selfish. All you ever think about is yourself. Exhibit A of sociopathic narcissism. I'm on my deathbed and angry that my mother left me and I'm selfish. That is sociopathic narcissistic logic. And that burst the baby inside of me's heart. That burst her heart. It shot it dead. And it laid it to rest violently. And that's when I emotionally, mentally became estranged. It almost gave me a surge of strength, psychological strength, because it awakened me fully to the reality. So while I was healing, I continued to play the game. And I got pretty good at it. You know? My aunt was another narcissist, way more covert, way nicer, way friendlier, but narcissistic. She would call me every day and say, "Hey, Leah, I'm checking on you because I care." But instead of actually caring, she would say, "I care." And one day, I was venting about the state of my skin, as I've explained to you. Excruciatingly painful. Remember how earlier in this video, when I was recalling the pinprick nerve itching, I started to cry because I could remember the feeling of it. Well, one day I was describing those sensations to my aunt and my mom in like a group chat, and I was starting to like purge worms. I literally was seeing these long ass fucking worms come out of my backside. I'm not shitting you. No pun intended. But when I started doing this cleanse, I would see the symptoms and track the patterns, the waves, whatever, and my skin would react, when the worms would die, and then the next day or hours later, I would see the worms come out in my poop. And it was just like this wild ride of just symptoms and healing and patterns and everything. And during one of those waves, I was talking about how I was shedding these insane, huge worms. Long worms. Long. 18 inches. 12 inches. Unbelievable. So I saw them. It was crazy. And I'm going to be graphic, so cover your ears. And I'll give you a hand signal when you can uncover your ears. I'll go like this when you can uncover your ears, okay? Cover your ears if you don't want to hear this gross thing. I'll go like this when you can uncover your ears. Okay, here we go. Shut your ears. I went in there with chopsticks multiple times, and I pulled out these long fucking worms. They were coming out of me. There was thousands of them, because they kept coming out for months. Every single day. Different shapes, different sizes. I'm done. You can open your ears. I'm done. I said the gross part. So anyway, I was sharing that with my mom and my aunt in a text, accompanied by grief and complaints over my skin. The shaking, the overstimulation, the pain, the agony doesn't even do it justice. It was just like pure agony, but more than that. So when I was sharing my moment of agony, my aunt replied with, you're so lucky to be so sensitive, or some spiritual bypassing bullshit. And naturally, I was so livid with her. I was at my breaking point. I was like, bitch, I am literally dying over here, and you have not offered to cook for me, or to come over, or to hug me, or to be here by my side, or to put away your responsibilities for a fucking day, to come be by my side and serve me, help me when I am in bed, debilitated. And you have the nerve to spiritually bypass me on top of that. So I blew up. I reached my breaking point. And this was a breaking point that had been culminating throughout my whole life. Like, I had spoken up to this woman before, I had expressed my grievances before, but I wasn't as clear about what my rage was really commanding me to do in relation to my mom and to my aunt, until the moment when I reached my breaking point and my health was at an all-time low. That's really when I learned from my body what I was supposed to say and do towards them. I didn't do anything towards them, but what I was supposed to say to them, what my body, my rage needed me to say to them to protect myself and to free myself of the shackles that they put on me emotionally. My cat is summoning me. Hold on. Kitty is happy, drinking from her faucet. She's a faucet gal. She likes drinking from faucets. Anyway, that was what she requested of me. So yeah, I reached my breaking point with my aunt because she spiritually bypassed my agony for the last time. And so I lashed out, and I expressed my rage to her in a text, and one of the things that I said in the text was "fuck you." And that "fuck you," that little "fuck you," was what she held on to for 3 weeks, and she stopped calling me every day. She stopped calling. She went silent. And I was still there with paper skin. I was still there, unable to shower and put clothes on for literally half the day. Showering was so overwhelming that sometimes I would just sit there still, like frozen, solid, because I was in so much physical agony. And I would sit there for hours until I could put on some clothes. And wearing clothes hurt most of the time. It hurt. Just wearing a loose cotton t-shirt, it hurt. And because I said "fuck you," because my aunt bypassed me spiritually for the kind of agony I was going through, she stopped caring. And I was still there enduring the same bullshit. Alone now. So yeah, my mom called me selfish. My aunt abandoned me. I even sent my GoFundMe to my extended blood family's group chat, and I said, "Hi guys, I do not expect you to donate to this. If you can, that would be helpful, but this is what I'm going through right now. It is impacting my quality of life. I cannot function. Please share this. Please help." I got 2 compassionate text messages back from 2 family members, and that was it. They just texted me. They didn't call me, and they didn't do anything to help me. They didn't send me food. They didn't do anything. They just sent me a text. But I was still there, disabled. I also had a step uncle of a full-blood uncle who had died in 2024 in the summer. Was it? Yeah. And I reconnected with him at my uncle's funeral that year in 2024. I think it was 2024. Time is just crazy. Yeah, I think it was. Yeah. And anyway, he was like, yeah, like, let's, stay in touch, whatever. I'm glad to have you in my life again. I hadn't seen this man since I was like an infant, probably like a baby. Because my dad died when I was young, and, mom's a narcissist, so she isolated me from the entire that side of the family, and none of them ever reached out to me to try to build relationships. Like, so the responsibility was always on me. The weight was always on me to like uphold any kind of familial relationship because no one would fucking reach out to me first in my own blood family. I've never felt at home. I've never felt warm. I've never felt safe. I've never felt what it feels like for. I've never felt what it feels like to be a part of a loving blood family, and I will never know that until I have my own children, and have my own husband and whatnot. I accidentally didn't unpause my video before I started recording again, so I am so sorry if I'm forgetting something, but I think I left off at my aunt, like, 3 weeks. So the first thing that she said to me after 3 weeks of not talking to me at all, after I said fuck you for invalidating my agony and spiritually bypassing my agony, the first thing she said to me was literally, hey, Aaliyah, I accidentally delivered groceries to your mom's house and there's meat in there. Do you think you can put it away? That was the first thing this bitch said to me after 3 weeks of ghosting me when I was bedridden. And the first thing she wanted was a favor. And it doesn't end there. She made more requests. Another request she made of me when she finally started talking to me again was, hey, Aaliyah, are you still going to make that GoFundMe for my friend who has cancer? Because I did offer to do that before I got stuck in bed. And the irony of asking me for help to do that when I was her niece, not her friend, her niece, debilitated in bed. And the request just kept going. She never once asked me how I was doing for weeks after that. Did I tell you this already? I'm so sorry if I'm repeating myself. I shared my GoFundMe in my blood family group chat. My mother from hell, my narcissistic sociopathic mother, criticized my spelling in the group publicly in front of everybody. I spelled perfectly. Bro, I'm a writer. I'm going to write books. Go on my Substack. Go on my Instagram. Listen to the way I speak, man. I'm the most articulate, clear, beautiful communicator ever. There are other beautiful communicators, but like, I have it down. I got the speech thing on lock, and she's over here trying to break me down when I'm already down asking for help. It's just fun. It's just a joke. It's a sick joke. She criticized my fucking spelling. Like my word choices. I don't misspell words. She criticized my word choice, my phrasing in my fucking GoFundMe asking for life supporting help. My mother, my mom, the woman who gave birth to me. And I got 2 compassionate messages from other people in that group text. But that was it. No calls. No, can I send you food? What can I do for you? No outreaching. No checking up on me. No, none of that. I also have a step uncle who is the half brother of my full uncle on my dad's side, Nobby, and he died. Nobby died in summer of, I think, 2024 or 23, but I think it was 24. Time is so fucked up, so I'm so sorry that I'm like not remembering this correctly. But yeah, so that happened, and I saw my step uncle at Nobby's funeral, and he was like, "Oh, you should come to wherever, San Diego. We live, that's where his family is from. My dad's side. My dad grew up in San Diego, and the funeral was in San Diego." And yeah, my step uncle and I like texted maybe a few times like after that point, and he expressed wanting to kind of reconnect. And so I sent him my GoFundMe as well. And by the way, with my family group chat and with my step uncle, I said, guys, there's no pressure to donate. I don't expect that, but if you can, that would be helpful. Anything would be helpful. But if you could share this, or just please be aware that I'm going through this right now. And mind you, I never had really a close relationship to any of my family because, again, nobody ever reached out to me to try to form a relationship. It was like the weight of it was always on me. Um, I was never approached, you know? People never came to me with consideration, with thoughtfulness. Like my family, they would not reach out to me first. And when you're a child, children aren't supposed to reach out first. They're supposed to be welcomed with love and warmth and abundance into a warm, soft, safe family unit. Children should not have to give anything because they are a privilege, they are a blessing, they are something to protect, something to serve, something to love, someone to love, not someone to put into a role, put into a box, or put burdens on, to be any kind of social familial glue. The children are supposed to be supported by the web that's already created, but I didn't have that web. And so when I shared my GoFundMe with my step uncle, I heard nothing back. So those were all of the events in my life in 2025 that burst my heart bubble, killed all of my hopes for family, really just like put a cap on them and snuffed out the candlelight. Like, good, good. I'm glad that the illusion died. It had to die. And that was the death. It was a violent death. It was a sudden death of my hopes for, family, blood family, closeness, anything like that. So that, I don't want to say inspired or encouraged, that allowed me to choose to become estranged from my entire family and all of the friends and people who I thought would have been there for me. I had friends watch my Instagram story who used to just want to be around me. They loved me, they loved my energy, they loved playing with me. I'm such a fucking weirdo, fun, strange gremlin person, and I'm so loving and I'm so deeply empathetic and perceptive, and people loved to listen to me and have me around, and they would feed off my power, and I was like just generous and happy to share. But then when I got sick and I started getting public about it, they all fucking dropped dead and silent like flies, man. So it was a no-brainer. It was a no-brainer for me. So anyway, in March, was it March or was it May? I think it was May. I don't know, but I did a few months worth of hyperbaric oxygen therapy in person with my practitioner who also did quantum nutritional testing, aka very advanced form of kinesiology to test what my body needed and when and in what doses and what regiment and whatever. And one symptom, by the way, doesn't necessarily mean one thing. Like the same symptom can be a result or be triggered by a number of different things, and that's why what my practitioner does using Q&T the way that she does it is so perfect for me because it addressed my flare-ups as they happened for the root that was causing them, and I always got results. I always would heal a little bit more every time she would prescribe me something to take. No pharmaceuticals or anything, just 100% herbs and natural things, and also oxygen therapy. I mean, it all saved my life. So yeah, anyone who's ready to transform their health and like actually make a serious investment, um, let me know and I can send you her contact info. And she does work remotely with telehealth, and I'm across the country now. I'm in Arizona. She's in Florida, so we still work together remotely. And yeah, she saved my life. She did. So anyway, between like January, February, and like May, well, but really between then and like March, I was like recovering my ability to literally stand on my own 2 feet again. Like literally, like I couldn't stand without feeling I was gonna faint. Um, and then from March through end of May, I still had flare ups, but they were at a point where I could walk at the park, and I could drive to the grocery store, and I could walk around and do like light, simple, easy things at home. And there was even a point where I could go for a run. Once it was like in April or May or something, and my body was like slowly starting to heal. Um, but even when I went on that run, I did have like a strong detox reaction that night and the next day. Like it really used all my spoons, it used all my resources that I had internally. So even when I did grow or heal rather and kind of expand, um, my body would kind of like contract again. So it was like an accordion, but in an upward trend. So anyway, after all that bullshit, I this is my story. I had plans to literally follow prophetic dreams to Arizona. I had dreamt of Arizona, not knowing where it was, not knowing what it, not ever having seen this region before, but just knowing that it was here. I had dreamt of these landscapes like 6-ish years ago, and it had been a goal of mine to travel out west across to some of these regions that I would see in my dreams reoccurringly, and my intuition was pulling me very strongly out here, telling me like this is where home is. And so basically on May 28th, when I had the strength and the timing was right, I packed up my car, packed up my cat, my traveling gal. She's the best traveling gal. She's just a blessing. Butter. She's almost 17. She'll be 17 this summer. And she acts like a kitten. She's so bright-eyed. She's active. Well, she sleeps a lot, but she's vibrant when she's awake. And yeah, she's just my angel. But so yeah, end of May, I packed up my stuff and I left my you know what? I'm getting into territory for a different separate story time, but um yeah, I'm just going to try to wrap this up real quick. So, end of May, I left Florida and I started driving across the southern strip of the US. And when I hit Texas, New Mexico, I went up, Utah, Idaho, Montana, Washington, Oregon, California, Arizona. And it's now January, and I just got the keys to my brand new house that I found on my birthday this year. 2 years in a row of being bedridden and having shitty friends on my birthday, to now God gives me my home on my birthday. God showed me my house this year on my birthday, 28. And I got the keys today, January 30th. It's a miracle. Anyway, there's so many separate stories within this kind of podcast, but yeah, so I was well enough, obviously, to travel. I still had health flare-ups, issues here and there, whatever. There's so much more to this, but that's kind of like the basic timeline story of how I healed, what I went through, and how I, made the decision to become estranged from my family, my friends. Friends, really, they weren't really friends. I mean, they were friends, but they left me at my worst. They dropped off. So yeah, let me know if you have any other questions. I'm happy to go into this more when I have energy to like post a new story, but I'm gonna leave this here, and I'm just gonna actually see if there's anything else that I know I had ChatGPT make question prompts for me, but I feel like I already like answered everything. Yeah. So I just reread the list of questions that I wrote, that I had ChatGPT generate, and I pretty much answered every single one of them through this story. So anyway, I'm gonna leave you with this. Let me know if you appreciated this, and let me know if you want more stories. I'll see you next time. Bye.